I sat in the waiting room of Kyla Torres's law office, my heart pounding like it had something to prove. The walls were quiet, painted soft gray, but my nerves were loud. Brandon stood by the window, arms folded, smirking. He hadn't looked at me since we walked in. "You're wasting your time," he said without turning. "Dad barely spoke your name these last years. You'll get nothing, Mom. Maybe a pat on the head, if that." I stayed quiet. My hands trembled, but I gripped my purse tighter. I didn't come for money. I came for respect. A door creaked open. "Mrs. George," Kyla Torres said, her voice calm. "Mr. George. Please come in." Brandon smiled, confident. But when we sat down and Kyla opened the will, she paused, and smiled. "Actually," she said, looking right at me, "that's not entirely true. If you like our revenge stories, please subscribe for more. We drop powerful news stories every week, filled with truth, emotion, and justice. Don't miss the next one. And remember, some stories hurt, but they heal too. Subscribe now, and join the journey." Brandon leaned back in his chair, his smirk fading just a little. Kyla Torres opened a thick folder on her desk. "This is the last will and testament of Richard George," she said calmly. I swallowed hard. I hadn't seen Richard in nearly 10 years. He'd moved on, married the company, and left me behind like a closed chapter. Brandon crossed his legs, relaxed. "Let's not drag this out," he said. "We know how this ends." Kyla raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "Richard George," she read, "being of sound mind and body, leaves the following." Brandon's name came first. A beach house. A $500,000 account. A luxury car. He smiled wider. Then Kyla paused. "Now, for the remainder of the estate," she said, looking directly at me. Brandon scoffed. But Kyla's next words shook the air. "To my former wife, and George." Brandon sat forward. "Excuse me?" Kyla continued like nothing happened. "I leave controlling interest in George Tech Industries, my primary investment accounts, and all remaining assets, estimated at $33.5 million, to N. George." Brandon's jaw dropped. His face turned red. "You're joking." Kyla looked up. "Mr. George, your father's wishes were clear. This was reviewed, signed, and witnessed 14 months ago." "But why?" he snapped. "They divorced. She has nothing to do with his life anymore." I didn't speak. I could barely breathe. Kyla reached into the folder again. "There's a letter." Mr. George asked it to be read aloud. Brandon stood. "No. I want a lawyer. I want this stopped." Kyla kept calm. "You're welcome to challenge the will. But you should hear what your father said." Brandon's hands were shaking. "Fine," he hissed. "Let's hear what the old man thought was so important." Kyla unfolded a letter. Richard's handwriting danced across the page. She read aloud. "Dear Anne, if you're hearing this, I'm gone. I know this comes as a shock, but I want you to know why I made this choice." Brandon rolled his eyes. "You stood by me when I was nothing. You raised our son. You gave up your dreams so I could chase mine. I became the man I am because of you. I didn't say it enough when I was alive. But you deserved more than I ever gave." My hand flew to my mouth. Kyla's voice was steady. "Brandon, you're my son. I love you. But you've never known struggle. Never known sacrifice. I built something, but you expect to inherit it. And helped create it. So I'm giving it back to her. Because she earned it." Brandon slammed his fist on the desk. "This is insane." Brandon jumped to his feet. He was sick. "This isn't valid." Kyla didn't blink. "He passed all mental competency evaluations." Brandon turned to me. What did you do? I looked at him, my son, so full of pride and anger. I did nothing, I whispered. I didn't even know he was sick. You lied. You manipulated him. You poisoned his mind. Kyla spoke firmly. Mr. George, your father planned this alone. He contacted me directly. He left no room for doubt. He stared at her. I'll fight this. You can, she said calmly. But the board at George Tech already received the change of leadership notice. My mouth dropped. What? You're the new majority shareholder, and chairwoman of the board. Brandon laughed bitterly. A retired schoolteacher as CEO? Kyla folded the will. No. As owner. The board handles daily operations. The power had shifted. And Brandon knew it. Brandon stormed out of the office. The door slammed so hard the windows rattled. Kyla turned to me. Are you okay, Mrs. George? I stared at the will, at the folder, at the letter. I don't know. Karen Wade met me outside. How did it go? I handed her the envelope. He left everything to me, Karen. The company. The money. Karen's mouth dropped. What about Brandon? He got a house and some money. And what did he say? That I manipulated Richard. Karen scoffed. Typical. You spent years raising that boy. He wouldn't know the word sacrifice if it hit him. I looked down the hallway where Brandon had vanished. He said I'd get nothing, I said softly. But Richard gave me everything. Karen smiled and linked her arm with mine. About time the world remembered who built it. Local headlines read, ex-wife named sole heir of George Tech fortune. Brandon's name wasn't mentioned. Reporters called me non-stop. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to speak. Karen brought soup and turned off my porch light. You okay? She asked. I didn't want this, I said. I wanted peace. Now you have both, she replied. And Brandon has a lesson to learn. That night, I looked at Richard's letter again. You taught me what real strength looked like. I'd forgotten those years, the late nights, the early mornings, the hope I held when Richard had nothing. Brandon had never known that version of me. But the world would soon remember. Not out of revenge, but out of truth. Brandon called the next day. I'm going public, he said. You don't deserve the company. You didn't build it. I stayed calm. Your father disagreed. You ruined everything. I didn't touch a thing, I replied. I didn't even know he was dying. You had years to walk away quietly. I did. For 15 years, Brandon. His voice cracked. He was mine. The company was mine. No, I said gently. It was never yours. You treated it like an inheritance. Your father saw it as a responsibility. Silence. Then he hung up. I stared at the phone. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of Brandon's anger. I pitied it. Kyla set up a meeting with George Tech's board. 12 men and women in dark suits sat around the long table. I walked in wearing my best navy blue dress and a necklace Richard had given me years ago. This is and George, Kyla said. She now holds 65% of the company's shares. Whispers. Raised eyebrows. One man stood. Mrs. George, we welcome you. Do you plan to lead operations? No, I said firmly. I'm not a CEO. I'm a caretaker. They nodded. But I'll be reviewing policies, especially those that affect the staff. Now they really look surprised. I was once the woman behind the man. I know what it feels like to be invisible. Not anymore. The board applauded. Quietly. Respectfully. Chapter 10, Brandon's interview. Brandon went on TV. He wore his best suit and fake smile. My father was manipulated, he said. He loved me. He would never give his life's work to someone who left him. Karen saw it first. Turn on Channel 5, she said. I watched my son lie with ease. He called me a traitor. A ghost. He cried on camera. The audience believed him. Until Kyla released the medical reports. Richard had passed every cognitive test. His letter had witnesses. His mind was sound. The backlash was swift. Entitled Heir tries to rewrite father's will. Brandon disappeared from the media for days. Truth always walks slower than lies. But it always arrives. Elizabeth Moore, Richard's assistant, called me. He told me everything before he died, she said. I met her at a coffee shop. She looked nervous but kind. He kept a folder with old letters. Ones you wrote him when he was building the company. He read them often. My heart jumped. He never stopped loving you, Anne. He just didn't know how to say it anymore. She reached into her bag and handed me a small envelope. Richard's handwriting. My name. Inside was a photo of our wedding day. On the back, it said, my biggest success started with her. I cried quietly in the corner booth. Not because I was rich. But because I was finally seen. Karen came over the next morning, frowning. There's talk Brandon hired a lawyer, she said. To fight the will? To fight you, she whispered. He's planning to claim mental manipulation. I sighed. Let him. He'll only hurt himself. Are you ready for this? She asked. No, I said honestly. But I wasn't ready to raise a child alone either. And I did that. Karen hugged me tight. You didn't just raise a child. You raised an empire. One day, he'll see it. Kyla called. Brandon's attorney filed a cease and desist, she said. He wants public statements removed. Says you're damaging his image. I laughed bitterly. He did that himself. Want to fight back? No, I said. Let him speak. I'll stay silent. Silence can be loud, Kyla replied. Yes, I whispered. That's the point. I wasn't trying to win. I already had. At George Tech's next staff meeting, I walked in. Hundreds of employees stared. Most looked surprised. Some clapped. I stepped to the podium. I'm not your boss. I'm your legacy, I began. They leaned in. I was once invisible, just like some of you. But I was always watching. Always listening. And now. I'm here. A man in the back stood. Ma'am, what do you want us to do? I smiled. Keep building. But this time, for everyone. Brandon's new business partner dropped him. No trust, they said. No class. He tried launching his own firm. No investors showed. He called me again. I'm your son. I deserve more. You got more than most, I replied. You took everything from me. No. I gave you everything, I whispered. You just thought it would never end. He hung up. And I let him. I woke up to a new headline. She wasn't supposed to get a dime, now she owns it all. For years, people saw me as the quiet wife. The shadow. The afterthought. But now, they saw something else. A builder. A fighter. A woman who didn't demand power, but still earned it. I walked through the company lobby. People smiled, nodded, whispered respectfully. I wasn't the CEO. I didn't sit in corner offices. But everyone knew, I was the reason Richard George started George Tech. A journalist reached out. Can we feature your story? No interviews, I said. Let the truth speak for itself. Karen laughed. You're becoming a legend. I don't want to be a legend, I said. I want peace. But deep down, I knew. Sometimes, peace comes only after the storm clears. And for the first time in years, the sky was finally clear. Brandon showed up at my door. He looked tired, like a man who had finally run out of excuses. I lost everything, he said. They won't return my calls. I have no job, no future. You still have a house and $500,000, I said gently. That's more than most. It doesn't feel like enough, he whispered. I nodded slowly. That's the problem. It never did. He sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I once packed his school lunches. I didn't understand what you did for me, he said. No, I replied. You understood. You just didn't care. He looked down, ashamed. Do you hate me? I paused. No, I said. But I don't trust you. That's something you'll have to earn back. He nodded, silently. And for once, he didn't argue. Elizabeth Moore returned with a box. These were Richard's personal files. He asked me to give them to you if anything ever happened. I opened the lid and gasped. Old photos. Letters. Business plans with my handwriting in the margins. I kept the books. I did the math. I stayed up with him while he dreamed, I whispered. Elizabeth nodded. You were the backbone, Anne. Everyone else just got to shine in the spotlight. There was a letter on top, sealed with wax. My name written in bold. I opened it slowly. You were always the best part of my story. Thank you for building my world when no one else believed in it. Forgive me for forgetting. This is me remembering. I pressed the letter to my chest. For years, I had wondered if I mattered. Now I knew. I had always mattered. The next board meeting was tense. Rumors said Brandon planned to contest the will again. He entered the room quietly, no lawyer in sight. I want to say something, he said, standing. To my mother. Everyone turned. Brandon looked at me, eyes red but steady. I was wrong, he said. I let pride control me. I thought being loud made me powerful. I thought the money would fill the hole. He paused. But you carried more weight than I ever realized. You earned it. All of it. Gasps filled the room. I stared, unsure what to say. Brandon continued. If there's still a place for me at Georgia Tech, I want to earn my way in. Not take it. Learn it. The room stayed quiet. I looked at the chair beside mine. Then I nodded once. Not out of guilt, but out of hope. Karen brought over tea that night. She sat on the couch, hands shaking, eyes wide. You really forgave him? She asked. No, I said. I gave him a chance to do better. That's different. She smiled sadly. You've always been stronger than you knew. I stared out the window. The city lights blinked like memories. I lost a lot, I whispered. But I never lost who I was. Karen wiped her tears. You did what most mothers would have done. And more. I placed my hand over hers. He'll never be the boy I raised again. But maybe, someday, he'll become the man I hoped for. She smiled again. And you? What will you do now? I took a deep breath. Live, I said. Finally. Freely. Without regret. For the first time in decades, I believed it. Georgia Tech's 30-year anniversary arrived. The company held a gala. High ceilings, string music, silver platters. I walked in slowly, wearing a dark green dress Richard once loved. Photos of Richard lined the hallway. At the center, one caught my breath. It was the two of us, years ago, holding blueprints, smiling like dreamers. The plaque read, "Founders in Spirit." I felt tears threaten but held them back. Kyla found me. Brandon helped plan this. He insisted your story be told. The program opened with a speech. Brandon stepped up. This company started because one woman believed in a broke man with a wild dream. Gasps. Murmurs. She never asked for credit. She just worked. Loved. Sacrificed. He pointed to me. And now, she owns it. Deserves it. And tonight, we celebrate her. The crowd stood. I smiled through tears. Not for the applause. But for being seen. Chapter 22, Apologies in the Dark. After the gala, Brandon walked me to my car. The stars were out. The parking lot was quiet. "Thank you for not kicking me out of the company," he said. "I didn't do it for you," I replied. "I did it for what your father built, and what I started." He nodded. "I was cruel. To you. To Dad's memory. I don't expect you to forget it." "I won't," I said honestly. "But I also won't hold it forever." He looked down. "What changed?" "You finally listened." He leaned against the door. "You think he's proud of me?" I thought for a moment. "I think he's watching. Waiting to see what kind of man you become." He smiled softly. "Then I better start earning it." For once, I didn't feel like I had lost my son. Maybe I had just found the man he was becoming. At home, I opened the old guest room. Boxes lined the walls, memories sealed in tape and time. I found my old teaching license, our wedding album, Brandon's baby clothes. Everything I once held onto in silence now felt lighter. I didn't need reminders. I had something stronger, peace. I kept only one box, photos of the three of us. The family we were. Not because I wanted to go back. But because I wanted to remember that love, when real, never truly disappears. I closed the door gently behind me. It was time to stop living in the past. It was time to step forward into whatever came next. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the future. Chapter 24, The Letter They Never Saw. There was one letter I never showed anyone. Richard had written it in shaky pen, dated just weeks before he died. "Anne, I don't know if Brandon will ever understand what you did for him. But I do. You raised a son, held a family, and stayed whole even after I broke us apart. If you never forgive me, I understand. But I hope this final act shows how deeply I regret not choosing you when it mattered most. You were never second. You were always everything." I folded the letter, pressed it against my heart, and cried. Not from pain. But from the kind of healing that only truth can bring. That night, I lit a candle. Not for Richard. Not for Brandon. But for me. For the girl I once was. And the woman I had finally become. Years later, I sat with my granddaughter, Emma. She asked, "Grandma, is it true you owned $1 billion company?" I laughed. Only for a little while. She smiled. "How?" I thought for a second. Because I didn't fight for power. I fought for peace. She tilted her head. "Did it work?" I pulled her close. "Yes. But peace comes when you stop needing the world's applause. And start clapping for yourself." Outside, the wind rustled the trees. Inside, I was calm. Not because I was rich. Not because I had one. But because the woman they counted out rose quietly. And rebuilt everything. And now, I pass on this truth. Dignity is the revenge they never see coming. Because I didn't just get the money. I got something far more valuable. Myself. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what part hit you the hardest. Thanks for watching.